Paternak. Oh, thank you, Kier. I'll start that over. Good evening. My name is Dan Paternak. I'm the chair of the 2022 Nominating Committee of Bronx Community Board number 8. This evening, we will be doing candidate interviews, but before that, I would like to just kind of announce our committee membership, and we'll take a little bit of a roll call. Margaret Della. Margaret. Margaret, are you present? There you are. Okay, Steve Fruit.
Present.
Omar Murray.
Present.
Thank you. And Stephen Vasquez.
Present.
Present. With a special guest with him.
Yeah. She's gonna sit on the meeting for a little bit.
Awesome. Okay, so just to bring everybody up to speed for some organizational items before we begin the interviews. We did send out another email. It went out. We asked folks, well, let me put it this way. We posted all of the positions on the board of which we did have persons seeking nomination for this year. We showed that there were still 2 committees where folks did not seek nomination this year. We alerted the board that we were going to have interview dates this evening, May 9th and on May 19th. I reached out to the candidates that we discussed at the last meeting that we wanted to see for interviews, and we set up interview dates. The schedule for tonight's interviews are at 5:30, or as soon as we can. It'll be Kelly Buford for Traffic and Transportation. At 6 p.m. we have Camelia Tepelis seeking nomination for the Environment and Sanitation Committee, and at 6:30 p.m. we have Deborah Travis seeking nomination for the Traffic and Transportation Committee. On May 19th, we have our interview schedule set up again. At 5:30 p.m. we have Ramdat Singh seeking nomination for the Parks and Recreation Committee. At 6 p.m. we have Rob Jaklowski seeking nomination for a position of secretary. And at 6:30 p.m. that evening, we have Joy Campbell-Prefeteri seeking nomination for the treasurer position. Also, as an announcement, we did have one other person. I'll put this information out tomorrow, as we come up with, an update on postings. Lisa Dowd did put her name in for consideration of the Aging Committee. Lisa had previously served as committee chair of that committee some years back. So it's a matter of whether or not we bring Lisa in for an interview as well, and on what date that will be. Being that we do have, our first candidate here, I guess we could talk about meeting dates a little bit at the end of the meeting and kind of get rolling. For purposes of any members of the public still here right now, what to expect in this meeting. What you can expect is that the meeting is going to end by 7 p.m. That's because we have another committee meeting, law, rules, and ethics meeting at 7 p.m. So we will adjourn this meeting by that time period. You can also expect that the only folks that we will recognize this evening are members of this committee and that particular individual who is being interviewed at that particular time. We will not recognize any other individuals in this meeting from the public or any other board members. Some other general items. It's a very free-flowing committee. I expect committee members just to kind of chime in. We did agree on a certain set of questions at our last meeting. That would be general questions that anybody could basically kind of chime in and ask at any time. But look, there's only 5 members and 1 candidate. So feel free to just chime in as you go. You don't have to raise your hand to be recognized if you're another member of the nominating committee. Everybody here is a serious enough person to just kind of chime in and respect another's wishes. One last note before we do begin the interviews is this. This is a public meeting. Every person by law is allowed to attend this meeting. However, these are interviews, and I would say that if you are a member of this board, I think you should consider whether or not, and again, I'm going to say you're legally entitled to be here, whether or not you should be here for this interview and whether or not you would want other people to watch your particular interview if you were going in front of this committee. On that note, Do any other members of the committee have anything to say before we begin the actual interview, or any other comments, questions, etc.? Okay. So we're going to get right into the interview right now. I see an iPhone 894, iPhone 89. Would you like to identify yourself? I just want to make sure that this is a real number here. Oh, okay, I do see a name right now. Okay. So we will begin the interview at this time. For any folks that do want to remain on, we will go from here. So Kelly Buford, welcome. Welcome to the Nominating Committee 2022. It is now 5:43, and we'll adjust the time accordingly. I'm sorry for the wait, but we will commence. Kelly, if you can just give us, a couple minutes, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, a little bit of your professional background, your time on the board, anything you would like to tell us, just kind of let us get to know you. You're muted.
That's the story of my life.
Yeah.
I'm a longtime resident of the community, or community member. I grew up on the fringes of CB8. I grew up in CB7, directly across from the VA Medical Center. I am part of a blended family. One of 11 children. I am number 10 of 11. My mother was an elementary school teacher for the city of New York, and my father was a World War II and Korean War vet, as well as a taxi driver, bus driver, security officer. I attended in junior high school, I attended a program at the Fieldston School, where I went every Saturday throughout the school year to receive advancement classes. For high school, I attended JFK, which is within CB8. I also attended the CUNY schools. I attended City College. I received my bachelor's from City College. I have a diploma in paralegal studies from New York University, and I have my master's degree from New York Institute of Technology. I work for a Fortune 50 company. I serve as the secretary or assistant secretary of approximately 45 of its subsidiaries, and I am happy to be in front of the committee.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll start with any committee members. Do any committee members have any questions that they would like to begin with?
Kelly, hi, it's Steve Fruit. How long have you been on the board? What kinds of things have you been involved in, either leadership or membership of committees or special projects, that kind of thing?
Sure. This year is my first year as being a CB8 member, but for the better part of the past 20 years, I have attended many community board 8 meetings. I currently serve as a member of the LRE and TNT committees. Previous board service outside of CB8, I serve on my co-op board. I am the board's treasurer, the corporation's treasurer. I have also worked with FIPNA, the Fort Independence Park Neighborhood Association, to ensure developers, and STAG in particular, when they were going through their development process of their properties, that they made sure to take the neighborhood into consideration, maintain a safe work environment and safe communities. So while I don't have any CB8 experience, I do have other board member experience.
Thank you.
Excellent. Margaret or Stephen?
Yeah, hi Kelly, my name is Stephen Vasquez. I think I actually got appointed to the board at the same time you did. So it's very encouraging to see a new member, seeking a leadership position. So are you part of the Transportation Committee now?
I am.
You are? Okay. So what interests you about the Transportation Committee? Like, why are you seeking a leadership position?
What interests me about the Transportation Committee is I think that, as a New Yorker, as a community member, as a driver, as a pedestrian, as as someone who utilizes public transit, that is one of the premier committees within the community board, right? And I think that, excuse me, there's no other committee to be on. I mean, I enjoy all of my board service, but I really do enjoy working with the community and helping address some of the issues that everybody, regardless of your station in life, is impacted by. Because as New Yorkers, we all have to use some form of transit. We all have to cross the streets. And why do I think I would make a great chair? Because I possess the skills and the temperament to serve as the chairperson. The chairperson of any committee, be it traffic and transportation, or the chairperson of the board, serves as the presiding officer and sets the structure and tone of the meetings and ensures appropriate policies and procedures are adhered to. He or she moderates the discussions and ensures all members of the committee are heard, as well as all members of the community are heard fairly and equally, regardless of his or her opinion. The chairperson also, like any other committee member, is entitled to one vote, and his or her vote does not have any more weight than anyone else's on the committee. And the role of the committee chair is to ensure that the committee remains as a cohesive and unified functioning body.
So, Kelly, if you could tell me, what are some of the things that you would like to do with the traffic committee? Do you have any plans or initiatives that you'd like to do if you became the chair of the committee?
Well, plans and initiatives of the traffic committee, my first goal is to listen, right? Mm-hmm. Listen to both the community and listen to the agencies and listen to the community committee members. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
And just to make sure that things are safe. The role of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, I view it as it's not a one-size-fits-all model. Each community has its own, landscape, and each part of the community board. I mean, the needs of, let's say, the traffic conditions over in the Van Cortlandt Village area is different from the needs of the North Riverdale area. They may be similar, they may have similar components, but they're different because the topography of each is different. The landscape is different. So you have to view things from that. And there's no one size fits all model for any of the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Kelly, what initiatives, or I know Dan asked about initiatives, but what subject matters would you anticipate taking up this year that were not, this coming year, I guess it would start with September, this coming year that were not covered? I can't ask you about previous years, so I'll just ask you about the 2021, 2022 term. What issues, subjects, areas, problems? It could either be of a procedural or a geographic. It could be anything from bicycles to cars to public transit. What accessibility of the 242nd Street station. What subject matters? What subjects would you take up or ask the committee to take up if you were to be chair next year that were not covered this year?
Sure. I would love to do them all, but recognizing that we just don't have the capacity to do them all, right? Because things take time. With everything, it takes time and you have to have a plan. But most importantly, my primary focus would be to maintain the safety of individuals and to promote educational platforms, right? Because one of the things I've experienced and I've heard over the years, even before joining TNT and joining the community board is, there's a lot of focus on what vehicles, what drivers do wrong, right? But I think if we're going to, make great strides in promoting safety, it has to be safety from all aspects within the community. So promote safety with pedestrians, remind them of some of the things that they can do to help mitigate some of the unfortunate things that have happened in our community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Margaret, Omar, do you guys have any questions? I'm going to ask a specific question for you.
Okay.
Recently, one of the issues that got a wide array of attention was the Riverdale Avenue traffic plan.
Okay.
And part of that we saw, or one of the issues that arose within this plan was the fact that DOT did not, well, I should say did not, they refused to give the community board, from my understanding, the presentation before they actually came to your committee and actually tell the community what it was that they were doing. How would you have handled that issue if you were the chair of the committee? Obviously, we know what happened that night. How would you have handled that issue?
In all probability, I would have probably adjourned the meeting or asked DOT to not present their presentation, because if the community did not have an opportunity to digest the information that was being put before them, it does a disservice to everyone. And it doesn't really promote being part of a community. It promotes a dictatorial mind frame where DOT is saying that we are going to do this regardless, and really the community has no input. And that is very contrary to the goals of any community board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just as a follow-up to that, this may be an intractable problem. Some agencies are so much more cooperative with the community board than others. And it saddens me just because my recollection is that 5+ years ago, DOT was somewhat more responsive. Maybe when Navarro Lopez, I don't know if he's still the commissioner, but when he was the deputy commissioner, I kind of remember that there was more cooperation, but I don't know what the options are today, other than that the head of the agency is a former council member of ours for part of our district. But any solutions, any planned solutions? Have you given thought to what could be done so that we don't end up at a meeting with, in the way that Dan and you were talking about a moment ago?
I think we have to set a tone, right? And it really comes down to, because if the agency continues to act in that manner, it really shows that they lack respect for the community. And it's unfortunate if that's the case. I don't think that that is at all the position that they're trying to put out there. But when you do things like that, it sort of makes individuals think that you have an underlying issue that you don't want to have addressed, and you're trying to skirt addressing that issue, right? In my professional world, I have the luxury of dealing with many individuals from interns, to the C-suite. So I would like to think that some of those skills that I have would be able to transfer over, and I would be able to work with our partners at DOT to sort of help them understand why it's also in their best interest to give us information in advance. So this way, if there are issues, they can get the proper community buy-in, and not just do something what appears from the neighborhood's perspective to be haphazard.
Another issue that has kind of popped up, throughout the year, it pops up every year, actually, as long as I've been on this board, is transparency. Can you give any of your thoughts on transparency of information within the committee, within the board, and what your take on it is? Any specific things that you would do as committee chair?
I believe in transparency. I also believe that, in being transparent, you have to cater your message based to your audience, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to also do it in a way that it does not come across as though you're intentionally leaving anything out, but you're trying to not have a lot of the, how can I say, technical terms, come before people, and you try to address the issues, the matters and bring it down to a layperson's level, recognizing that you will have multiple persons on the calls from various stations and educational levels in the community. And that would be one of the ways that I think it would be, we could better serve the community.
Yeah. One of the, you know, for me, being on the community board, I think one of the things that, like I've kind of always said, is that, you know, I want to hear from all community board members, and everyone is not supposed to always be in agreement. You know, everyone has a different view, everyone has a different perspective, and they bring that to the table. And that's why, you know, the community board generally votes, or I should say, they vote and we speak in terms of resolutions, of majority decisions. So as a chair, if you became a chair, what is one way that you would promote the voices of the committee members, the traffic committee members? How would you do that as a chair?
Sure. First, the one thing I would, you know, try to impress upon people is that that everybody has a voice. The chairperson does not speak solely for the committee. The chairperson is just the conduit by which the liaison for the committee to the board and other committees, right? I would also, if I am given the honor and opportunity to serve as the committee chair, I would also, you know, meet with, you know, committee members in advance to understand them and to understand what their issues are in the community, and see how we can come up with a plan to help address that, and to make sure that all voices within the community, within the committee, are heard. And because there is an importance in maintaining diversity of thought within the committee.
I have one question, Dan.
Yeah.
I think it's great that even a first-year member of the committee, even though someone who's kind of knowledgeable about the community pre-community board existence, is willing to step up. And it's a big thing to take over a committee with just a year on the board. And I appreciate that, and I applaud it. I'm not even sure I was excited to do that myself. But one thing that does strike me is that we do have an opening for, there's an opening in the sense that there's one committee where the incumbent has decided not to continue in the role at Environment and Sanitation. And Traffic and Transportation was not one of our open in the sense of needing someone to step up if they wanted to be considered by the nominating committee. And fortunately, Aging it seems that we may have someone who's interested. And I wonder if you would consider, since there is this opening, as it were, I wonder if you would consider taking the helm, or being considered to take the helm of the Housing Committee, which is at the moment, unless Dan knows something he's not telling you.
Oh, no, I haven't heard of anybody else, but I would reiterate something that we have, that all positions are considered open and vacant each year.
Right, but that notwithstanding, we as a committee, when we met last time, we tried to brainstorm about people we could reach out to hopefully have people step up for certain committees. And in fact, I want to take credit for talking to a couple of people about aging.
Well, thank you for the consideration and the thought on that. But for me, I have not sat in on many housing meetings. So I would not even know where to begin with that. And I know that the community board itself as a whole has a lot of institutional knowledge. However, I don't think I would be comfortable serving in that capacity, at least until I've had an opportunity to participate in some meetings.
Thanks.
Okay, Omar, Margaret, are you guys there?
I'm here. One of the follow-up questions I had was, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I wanted to see, like, just from what you were saying about making the information more digestible, if you will, for the community. And also how to manage like these crazy timelines where you have Con Ed giving you bits and pieces. You have DOT, you know, barely showing up or giving you answers that no one's happy with, or that, you know, just last minute stuff. You know, and seemingly sometimes the community board and the community are on opposing ends of the decision. Can you share with me a little bit what your style is on sort of like trying to thread the eye of a needle, if you will?
Sure. Well, I'm known as a very patient and flexible person professionally. I'm also known for being able to reach across the aisle and get things done. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that as one who works with a lot of lawyers, and I am not an attorney, I try to get them to speak English when they're writing, right? And when they're communicating, because when we're sending documents out to our business partners, it's incumbent upon us to give them as much information as possible without them having to go, you know, to the dictionary to look up terms or to continue to write back. What does this mean? I don't know what this means. So if we can get that messaging across to individuals initially, I think that would allay some, you know, some of the concerns that some of the community members have. And then when it comes to the board and the community being on the opposing sides, right? Again, that speaks to openness. And we have to be willing to look at all things that are on the table and look at opportunities, look for information that's being shared with us by, you know, people within the community, because we also would like to think that we know every, you know, nook and cranny within the community, but no one knows the community better than the person that's looking out their window and watching something happen, right? And so we have to be mindful of that in whatever we do, and have to make sure that we reinforce the fact to the community that the community board serves the community and not the other way around.
Okay. Thank you. Omar, are you there? Omar?
Hey, yeah, Dan, I think she already answered the question I wanted, which is what initiatives would she do if she's elected as chair for this committee? Yeah. So I have no more questions. So she did. So, you know, thank you so much, Kelly, for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other committee members? Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question then.
Yeah.
So Kelly, in regards sort of like a follow-up question to Dan's question earlier, and to Margaret in terms of increasing participation from various board members, and I guess crafting a message that's easily digestible. So one of the, I guess, kinds of populations that I would want to see much more involved are the youth. Are there any specific plans that you have that you could think of at the top of your head, or anything that you'd want to spear and you know, tackle to try to increase a much more younger crowd participate in the board, or specifically in the Traffic and Transportation Committee?
That's a very good question, Stephen. I try to reach across the aisle for it. In my other world too, I also serve as a mentor to many young professionals. I serve as a mentor to many high school students through one of the programs, through my participation in National Black MBA Association. So I do have access to those individuals, but I also think that we need to go out to and participate in the youth committee meetings, right? The education, cultural, and language committee. That's the way you're going to reach the younger sect within our community. You're not going to reach it by going through normal everyday channels. I know that we do post things on the website. We have to meet people where they are. And one of the ways we meet people where they are, I mean, even within my building and my community, when there are issues and people start talking to me about them, I say, don't come to me directly. You need to come to the meeting and have your voice heard. And some of the individuals do that and some don't. And unfortunately, you know, that is how it is. But I think we can all do better, and even, promoting some of our activities in different, mediums would help.
Okay, so Kelly, thank you for coming out.
Thank you for
it's
having
6:07,
me.
so we do have to move on, but thank you so much. Have a good night. Well, actually, you're free to hang on if you would like to.
Sure.
It's up to you. You don't. Again, it's by law. You're certainly welcome to be here, but again, I'll say things to yourself whether or not you'd want other folks watching your interview. Your call.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the next individual that we have up, we'll get right to it, just I could see another candidate is on here, is Camelia Tepelis. Camelia, are you there?
Yes, then I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I am. I'm a bit blinded by the sun, but
okay.
Do you hear me okay? Okay.
I can hear you okay. So I'm going to open up. And if you can just tell us, in a couple minutes, just give us a little bit of a background about yourself, where you're from in the CB, your professional life, any other things that you think, can give the committee a good background about yourself.
Sure. Yes, so this would be my 4th year as a community board 8 member. In my professional life, I am very much focused on economic development. I'm the executive director of one of 11 Bronx business improvement districts. And in this capacity, I have a lot to do with the topic that I'm actually here for, which is environment and sanitation. I also happen to be, due to my work, quite informed of work done around the Bronx that is relevant, that puts me kind of in a position to benchmark and make comparisons between projects we have going on here and other neighborhoods. As far as environment and sanitation, which is the position that is open and that we are discussing now for the next year, it was not my necessarily sort of my very first thought to apply for this, but after being asked to apply by several leading community board members, including the current chair of environment and sanitation, I decided that I should listen and I shouldn't do what I wanted to do, but to actually serve the need that I'm called to fulfill. So I was member of environmental sanitation for the first 2 years of my tenure in the board. I enjoyed very much. My educational background is actually in environmental management and policy, a master's and a PhD in industrial environmental economics. So the topics are very familiar. But, and last year I wasn't member, but I still attended the meetings of environment and sanitation as much as possible. And I feel very strongly about the people and about the topics. My main issue of interest, I have to confess, is the Tibet project that I've been following since actually the year before I joined the community board as a fellow of SBS here in the Broadway corridor, where I witnessed directly and personally floodings. So ever since, this has remained in my heart as something that I do want to pursue. So I hope I gave you a little bit of background of why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Steve, do you want to open up with a question?
Sure. First of all, thank you for stepping up and answering the call from other community board members to take on this role. Either what priorities or what plans or what subject matters would you expect to try to cover, or what would you do with the committee in the coming year within reason, within, anyone's ability to do that, what types of subjects or what subjects would you want to cover? Noting that there are really two very distinct or quite distinct aspects to the committee, and also two quite cooperative agencies. DEP has been extraordinarily cooperative in coming to the committee and engaging. And my understanding or my recollection is that sanitation was a close second. So those are two different areas with two different agencies that are willing to talk and share. What plans or initiatives do you have in mind for the committee in the coming year, or would you?
Yes, I mean, this committee has an extremely deep basis of work as it is. I mean, I've been attending many different committee meetings this past year, because I did want to kind of expand my reach, and I'm very confident in saying that environmental and sanitation has a couple of elements that will keep me attracted to it. It's not just sort of theory and philosophy and what we think, but it's really based in science. It brings experts and it has kind of concrete plans. So I plan to continue fully the project that environmental sanitation has been addressing over this past year, other than the sort of special Tibet project, to call it like that. There are issues around sanitation, bringing back composting. And I would also like to see much more sort of engagement of other demographics within the community board that have not been engaged with us. So I think I would continue the work that has been done, and both with DEP and DSNY, I have, again, pre-existing relationships. So I feel like this will be a very natural continuation. I have nothing but the utmost respect of the work that has been done by the previous chair, by Bob Fanuzzi. So I fully expect his support in continuing this work, which is very worthwhile. Oh, one special thing I want to bring up, which was actually the original reason why I applied to the Community Board 8, was actually the topic of environmental justice. I worked in Marble Hill prior, so I was very instrumental at raising this issue back again during my work in environmental and sanitation prior to this past year. And I was super happy to see that they have been continuing this and actually having a very active role in providing input to city agencies on this topic as it applies to our community board.
Thank you.
Camelia, can you tell us a little bit of what you believe the role of a committee chair is?
Yes, the role of the committee chair is not to tell the committee what to think, but to listen to all members of the committee and make sure that the full board is informed and approves resolutions that the committee as a whole puts forward. A very important role of the committee chair, in my view, is actually respecting the legal context of our operation. You probably know I started raising fairly actively the issue of the open meeting laws, which to me is an issue of equity and community outreach. So minutes and agendas should be, available appropriately within the time frame required by the law. But as far as the chair position, it's, make sure when there's supposed to be quorum, there is quorum. Make sure you keep track of things, have your minutes ready, have yourself accountable to committee members, make sure both committee members and to the extent possible, other CB8 members and the public are being heard in committee proceedings. And just, I like to see things getting done. I like to see how we set up things in motion, and then we follow up with city agencies, and then we keep track of progress and we provide input to the best of our abilities. So that's how I see a committee running. Sorry, I need to move my parking.
It's okay. Stephen, Margaret, Omar, do you guys have a question?
Okay, I'm good.
I would just say that, you know, personally speaking, I do find that, you know, this committee, sometimes the information is very difficult to move through. And I actually was on the committee for the first year of being on the community board. I felt like my mind was blown. So like I say that with the utmost respect for those who have served on this committee, because it just gets wildly complex really quickly. So I guess I agree with your point that the chair's position is to hear from the community and sort of not take the lead. But I also think that this kind of community or this kind of committee, you know, it is a struggle to sometimes understand like what's the context. How will this really affect me? You know, looking at the reservoir, the hell that the committee raised, and they kept getting pushed back from the city. You know, it definitely felt as though there was a lead to be followed, I guess, in that respect, where sometimes you're not getting straight information from the city, or you really need someone who's been working with the community board for the last 40 years to go back and dig up an agreement that we had with the city or whatever. How would you balance both the accessibility of information, taking the lead, but also following the community, and making sure that you're sort of bringing folks along with you?
No, absolutely, Margaret. First of all, I want to say that, I mean, again, I have a master's and a PhD, and prior to that, a degree in chemical engineering. And do not worry, you have nothing to worry about. Yes, sometimes the presentations we see are very, very hard to understand by highly trained people, not only by the general public. I agree with you. Having said that, I do believe it is our task, sort of say, I mean, our task as community board, right? To translate that, or to make a presentation of 25 technical slides convey into a simple sentence that the regular person can understand. Oh, so you say that, you know, by increasing the pipe size of whatever, the main sewer, then there will be less flooding or whatever. You see what I'm saying? Like simple things. And I do feel like, because the people in environment and sanitation, some of them have like decades history in knowing an issue in our area. Sometimes maybe they forget, hold on a second, you know, the people attending now on Zoom, like they don't know that, you know, the 4 decades long history of us advocating for it. So I felt that myself as a board member. So being aware of that, I will make sure I take an active part in that translation to plain and simple language for people, because I absolutely agree with what you said. Not to mention, you know, people that have, for which English is not their first language, etc., etc. So yes, I am aware, and I will do my best to keep meetings in very intelligible, plain and simple language that is community friendly, and to clarify things that I feel like need to be clarified. We don't need to impress nobody with our overly technical knowledge. So I will make sure that, you know, I speak regularly with the city, so I often have to go myself and ask for clarifications on this and that. I think city agencies are very used to thinking in their boxes. And sometimes you do have to like put a little bit of extra effort to make them get out of that box and use more language that is more accessible to the general public.
Okay. Omar, do you have any questions?
Hi, Camila. Good evening, and welcome
Hey,
to the
Omar.
Nominating Committee. Yes, I just have one question. Like, what would you do like differently apart from the outgoing chair? As the chair
Yes.
for the
Yes. There are very again, I have absolute, like, full, total, unreserved respect for Bob and Karen, and they were the two actually members that reached out to me, and I was so, like, grateful and felt very honored that they did that. Probably the only things I would do differently is, one, the issue of length of meetings. There were a couple of meetings where I myself attended. I mean, and then again, like, I'm nothing but in admiration of Bob's stamina. But a meeting should not end at 11 at night. It means that you as a chair have to take a couple of executive decisions along the way. It's great that you have 150 people on the meeting, you know, discussing why the water tastes a certain way and all this explanation about the croton and this and that. But still, how to say, there is a point where people just want to convey their views, but they are repetitive. So I feel like as a chair, you do have to have that strength to say, okay, we've heard now from 10 community members. I'm sorry, but I have to sort of stop and move on, because I do feel like, again, the way the community board operates, it should not deter people from, you know, being motivated to continue to participate. So I do think sort of meetings should be not only environmental sanitation. All meetings could be better managed as far as time. Though there are of course always special occasions when probably we have to go further. So this is one thing, time management. And the second thing is what Margaret said. There were definitely times where the meetings were overly technical, I felt, which I feel like would have been very hard to, you know, to understand by a person that doesn't have a lot of years of background into a particular issue. Having said that, I do feel like all resolutions coming forward to the full board were always very clear. So I don't think that, I mean, again, there's one thing when you're on a committee meeting and another thing in full board. But these are the two issues that I would pay more attention to.
So Camelia, you mentioned before, the CSX railway, the old Putnam Railway, which is, you know, been, you know, there was a Euler proceeding a number of years back, which converted it to parkland. And, you know, recently DEP obviously has gotten involved and they would like to, you know, basically daylight Tibbetts Brook and run it through that new park space. So it's one of the biggest projects that we're going to see in this community board. Right. There's a lot of moving parts to it. DEP and the Parks Department came to the E&S committee. Well, I guess there was a joint meeting between E&S and Parks in December, and yes, they presented to the committees. We know that there's going to be another presentation in May this month. Yes. As that project moves forward, what are some of the challenges you see with respect to being a committee chair with that project? What do you need to do as yes, a committee chair? What are your responsibility or your role as committee chair to the public, to our community with respect to that project?
Right. Let me just add that in addition to the meetings you mentioned, I'm a member of the TAG, the Tibbetts Advisory Group. So there were two other meetings that I attended to. A Zoom meeting where they fully presented sort of where the project is right now in its design phase, and the 4-hour walk on the field where they actually showed us, you know, at each and every potential entry point, all the issues. It was absolutely fascinating. Actually, we were all able to ask 1,000,001 questions, and believe me, I was one with the 1,000,000 question as well, or many board members that were there. There were several of us actually, and community members. And then we had a debriefing at the end for us to again review everything we've been seeing. So sorry, your question was what are the main challenges that I'm seeing? So
it's interesting.
I'm sorry, I just got into this.
No, it's okay. You mentioned the Tibbetts Advisory Group, which is a separate body from the community board.
Yes.
So with all the challenges, given the scope and breadth of this project, as committee chair of E&S, what would you do? And I'll be more specific. What would you do to get all of this information out and engage the public in this project?
Yes.
And again, so, Tibbetts Advisory is different than the community board.
Sure, but note, again, they invited the community board. The chair was there, the vice chair, from sanitation, there were 3 people, myself from, well, economic development technically. How to say, I think the main task on the E&S committee chair for this project is to be an active counterpart or partner to DEP in securing that the process keeps moving instead of being stalled. I mean, sometimes I feel like, how to say, people don't understand how the city works well enough, including board members. So then sometimes like you have comments that I'm not in an innocent way, right? Like, and that the administrative flows and the management processes and the decision-making processes involved are not given sort of proper credit. And I often find that city agencies are criticized, I think overly criticized, but they are doing their best. And at least for me, this DEP presentation and these sessions that took place showed me DEP is not only committed, but actually they secured funding for the design, and they need us, the community board aid, to actually be an outspoken partner and to be the voice of the community. So this would be my task, to listen and to be the voice of the community and the voice of the businesses, the voice of everybody that will be a beneficiary of this project from the community board towards DEP, and make sure they have our feedback in a consistent and constructive way. There will be so many more agencies. The project is still at the beginning, but definitely it's a seed that was clearly planted. It's clearly in the ground. They are watering it, to make a metaphor here, but it's there, it's active. It's not, an idea at this moment. So I feel like we gotta keep the course, be the active voice that Bob and Karen were, and many people before them, Laura, and keep this alive and keep us being, again, constructive and supportive, a partner when we need to partner, a critic when we need to critic, but always keep moving this along. This is a tremendous project for our community.
Camelia, I'm just going to dig a little deeper to get to where I'm going. How do you do that as chair? How do you make the committee an active voice and an active partner? And again, I'm just going to go back to the last engagement the CB committee had, which was the presentation back in December. So now, as committee chair, where do you take us? How do you get us to be an active voice?
Yeah, I think that the committee is already and has been for many years an active voice. I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel. I think I'm continuing conversations that are already open and active. And yes, I do know that some people feel like they were not active enough or open enough. The chair sent the other day the website that DEP already published on the project. That information is already out. As I was saying, I was already following that. So there's so many people that work for this for years. My only role here is to make sure that all of us keep our attention focused to this and keep speaking up like we always did. And speaking up was never my problem.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Any other committee members?
Yeah, Dan.
Have questions for Camelia? Yes, Stephen.
Yep, I have a question. Hi, Camelia. Good afternoon. Well, good evening.
Hey.
So you had mentioned earlier about reaching out to different demographics, right? So one of the demographics that I feel that the board could do, well, as a whole, and each individual committee could do a lot better in, is reaching out to a much more younger demographic, right? As I stated in when we interviewed Kelly, what would be a way, or how would you craft a message to interest, say, a 18 or 19-year-old in environment and sanitation?
Do you still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay, sorry. First of all, Stephen, let me just share that you raised this issue in the initial nominating committee conversation. And I was just opening my heart the other day in SCRE, in the special committee on racial equity, saying how touched I feel that after so many conversations, look, this, like, we as the committee on racial equity kind of made a difference in the discourse, to the point where a member of the nominating committee, you, raises this question even to begin with. Because we looked at our demographics and we realized how we definitely need to make a more active effort in reaching out, not only on a racial basis, Hispanic, whatever, Latino, all these things, Black, whatever, but also in terms of age. And that's a sensitive point, but it's a point we do have to address, because I think as a community board, we do have to basically engage the next generation. So I think there is a lot more we can do. I think it would be wonderful to have an outreach mechanism, especially on projects that are so exciting as this one, as Tibet, for example. I mean, it would be so wonderful to have sort of public conversations, like a forum or whatever, a conference, to reach out to our colleges around us, you know, to Mount St. Vincent, to Manhattan, to all of them, and just have the young people come and join. It would be wonderful to do cleanups with them. And there are already local groups that are doing that, but we as a community board, I feel like there is space there to, you know, to be covered. Also, I mean, sorry, but like social media, I was the annoying one that back over in COVID was like, why aren't we, you know, pushing out things? I think on social media right now is undeniable. I pushed CBA to reactivate its Twitter account, which has been active for 2 years, and only my annoying self after the IDA, you know, made that happen again. Other community boards are having online live streaming on Facebook of all their meetings. They have Instagram accounts. And I don't want to push too hard because, how to say, we got to be cautious and we got to be careful, and I don't want to overpromise. I would rather promise a little and stick to it, but see incremental change. So I think that the point you raised is absolutely valid. I myself, the mother of 2 children, I'm actively involved in pushing them in all kinds of nature involving activities. So this is an issue that is very close to my heart. And I do have, honestly, a deep concern for the community board and how to say, having people represented. Like if you look at the demographics of the district compared to the demographics of community board aid membership, you will see issues. And I think it's hard to address them. And again, I'm just absolutely just grateful to you for just nominating committee, even like raising this, because it should be an issue not only for new members, new candidates for chairs, but this should be a very active issue for already existing chairs that have been running their committees for years and years and years. Just to say thank you. Again, appreciating the question. I don't know if I answered long enough, but I think I answered enough to tell you that it is on my mind.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Camelia. Do any other members have questions for Camelia? Okay. Okay, Camelia, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, thank you all of
Thanks
you
so
for
much.
taking the time to do this every year.
And I see you're already outside enjoying the nice weather, so good for you.
I know, but I have to be back on Zoom, as you know, in 25 minutes for LRA, so see you later.
So do I.
Okay, bye. Thank you one more time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Camelia. Take care. Okay. So our last interview for the evening, we have Deb Travis for Traffic and Transportation. Margaret had texted me saying that her phone was running out of power. She was going to try to like plug in and get back on just to alert folks. So we'll start. So Deb, I'm going to start the same place we have for everyone else. If you can please just tell us a little bit about yourself within a couple of minutes. What part of the CB you're from, your professional life, things that you think we should know about you, just to kind of get us to know you.
Okay, that sounds great. And I'll be also mindful of our hard stop at 7. So I'm the current chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee. I have lived on Sedgwick Avenue since 2016. I'm the founder of Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors, which cares for the planting beds around Jerome Park Reservoir, particularly Fort Independence Park and Washington's Walk and Fort 4. We perform approximately 24 cleaning and greening volunteer days each year, basically every Saturday, starting in June and going through November. And we've done that since 2017. I am also the president of my co-op board and was a former leader on the Kingsbridge Heights Community Association, where I taught a session called How to Complain Well, about how to best advocate for your community and how to engage with the community board. I've been on the community board itself for 3 years, and I've served as the vice chair on the Parks Committee, the vice chair of Environment and Sanitation and the Traffic and Transportation Committee before I became chair. I participated in presentations for the community board at Manhattan College on how to make a parks group. And I've been awarded the Irving Latimer Community Service Award in 2018 from Community Board 8. And Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors was awarded the Tim Tompkins Leadership Award by the City Parks Foundation in 2019, which is awarded to the community group that most acts as a role model for New York City park volunteers. I work in transportation at Zipcar, and I've been there since 2016. I have a bachelor's degree from NYU and a master's degree in English from Brooklyn College, which is when you have a master's degree in English, it's mostly what you've learned is not to get an advanced degree in English. So that's me in a nutshell.
Deb, I'm sorry, where did you say you work now?
I work at Zipcar. So Zipcar is
Zipcar, right. Got it.
Yeah, it's a car sharing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've asked a bunch of different questions. We'll start. What do you believe is the role of a committee chair?
Oh, that's a good question. So I feel like the role of a committee chair, I mean, first off, I want to say that I've been very intentional this year in trying to get the right balance. You have a lot of competing priorities when you're the community, where you're in the committee chair, between time management, particularly on large meetings, communication, like making sure that everybody on the committee but also in the community, all the people who come, they understand how the meeting's going to flow, what the expectations are, who's speaking first. And so I feel like I felt very honored a few weeks ago when Marty Wolpoff used my Riverdale Avenue Road Diet meeting as an example of how a meeting should be run, just because it's been a lot of trial and error to try to get just the right tone. I think that, as a chair, let's see, I think you want to make sure that people who've not been to committee meetings before, they understand and feel welcome. I think it can be really intimidating. And I know when I first started going to committee meetings and community board meetings, I didn't understand what was happening at all. And I didn't know when I could speak. And I often felt kind of ashamed or nervous to say anything. And so I always try to keep that in mind because, I feel like I come from a privileged world. I mean, if I feel intimidated, I just try to keep in mind that other people may feel even more intimidated or more less welcome, more unwelcome. And so, so that's the first thing, is just to make sure that everybody who shows up actually comes and spends their time there, feels like they are welcome there and they know what to do and how to participate. The next thing is to make sure that it proceeds in a way that doesn't frustrate folks, that there's an order and an understanding, and that, you try to end it on a reasonable time so that, folks are not exhausted. Folks have to put their kids to bed. And, the longer it is and the more people feel frustrated, the less likely they are to engage and participate in the community board at all. And, at the end of the day, that's really what we want, is we want people to feel heard and like the time they spent is meaningful. And so I think the role of the chair is to make everybody feel like they've been heard, that the conversations are productive, and that the committee is a functioning civic body.
Okay, Steve or Stephen?
Stephen?
No, don't have a question at the moment now.
Oh, okay. Omar, Margaret?
Deb, since I'm sorry.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Deb, since you're an incumbent, you've run the committee for a year, I realize in some respects you're probably not lacking for topics and things to tackle, but putting aside that there was a lot of interest in at least a couple of issues, and maybe that stretches back to Dan before you, that took up a lot of the committee's time. Are there particular areas, subject matters, literally locations but also just topic areas that you would hope to cover next year in terms of plans for the committee?
Yeah, I would say that, I've been on the committee board for 3 years, and I've been engaged with the Parks Committee and Environment and Sanitation even before I was engaged with Traffic and Transportation. And those were the two committees, because of my parks work and because I live next to the reservoir and I often have to advocate, that I was involved with those committees before I was even involved with the board. So I think that, my participation there has actually informed a lot of the work that we've done on TNT. And so, really focusing on the Deegan, just out of the gate in September, and thinking about stormwater. We had a really great presentation from the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality. When was that? That was the February meeting. Karen Argenti came and just really talked to the committee about the role of the catch basins, and how the streets were really causing combined sewer overflow, and our untreated sewage goes straight into the Harlem River, goes straight into the Hudson River, and that some of the solutions to that are actually, they lay in asking things of DOT and not always ENS and DEP. And so, and the same with parks, trying to make the entrances to parks, the pedestrian access to parks safe. So some of those things kind of they bleed through in terms of my interest. And I think that's just naturally what happens. Also just outreach, just to finish answering that question, I expect that next year is going to be a lot of continuing on with this year. It's nothing gets just solved like that. And so there'll be more trying to improve on the drainage issues. Just in the Riverdale Avenue discussion that we had a few weeks ago, we discovered there was more drainage stuff happening with some co-op up there. And so, focusing on that as well. I'm sure there'll be cleanup and stuff involved with whatever happens with the Riverdale Avenue street stuff this summer. The outreach has been really important to me this year, and just trying to continue to figure out how to iterate on that and improve that. We had 3 meetings where we discussed Bailey Avenue as a whole, but then from what the community said, really focusing on 2 particular intersections, and made a point of going and putting up the flyers in English and Spanish on Bailey Avenue to try to make sure people could come. But even then, we really, we maybe had, over the course of those 3 meetings, probably 10 or 15 people that came. And it's just hard to know whether you're really getting a pulse of a community in that way. We can see the statistics at a high level. We can talk to the police department in the 5-0. But I would really love to try to figure out better ways to just get, more community engagement. And then, it's step streets are another one that was, we worked on it a lot this year. Really, I went to every step street and kind of took notes about what was going on with all of them. And, on ENS, Laura for years worked on trying to get better sanitation and improvement there. There's been a lot of great work that the board has done with the Councilman Dinowitz's office. But we've gotten a lot of those step streets added to budget priorities. I think we've got a new maybe a new angle in getting the DOT to actually go inspect them. And they say they've got a schedule, and they say they've got money for some basic cleanup and maintenance and repairs. And so that's what we're really working on now, is to try to hold them to that, and see if we can get, some railings painted, some steps reseeded, the stuff that where it's just some basic cleanup that needs to be done, and that'll continue on, I'm sure, through next year. Trying to think what else. The Deegan, I think, is another one. I've been kind of working to try to formulate to come back to the committee just to look at New York State DOT and where there are some intersections there. The on-ramp, off-ramps at the Bailey entrance to Van Cortlandt Park. There's no way for pedestrian to get across. And I know families with children who can't get to the park through that entrance. And so it's parks, it's New York State DOT, and it's New York City DOT. And so trying to build those relationships, especially right now, because the former commissioner for the Bronx, Navarro Lopez, is now at New York State DOT. And so there's this opportunity. He knows the neighborhood really well. there's an opportunity really to talk to him and to try to engage on some like these really specific things like the Deegan and entrances and exits to the Deegan. So
by the way, I appreciate that comprehensive answer. As we end up in bricks and mortar meetings again, one way is if it's possible to pair a local issue, a physical location with a meeting location that's closer. I mean, I found over the years that was often an effective way of getting people out to a meeting who would not otherwise come to, I don't know, Skyview Shopping Center,
Well, it's huge. It makes a big difference. And it's always, I know, I appreciate that it's always a challenge just because you're booking these venues several weeks in advance, and then, DOT throws something on your agenda the week before. But, I'll say that I've been on the board almost entirely in Zoom. And so when I attended meetings in person. I attended meetings in person as a regular old person. And so it's going to be actually a new experience for me, even though I've been on the board for 3 years. I've only had 3 months of actual in-person meetings. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it's going to make a big difference just seeing people's legs. You don't realize how transformative it is to actually see people in person, but I think it's going to make a big difference.
So Deb, one of the questions I asked before, I kind of said that it's important as a community board that everybody has different voices and everybody has a different perspective on the community and how things should be, but we vote, and when we vote as a board, we speak through the resolutions that we come out. So one of the things that I believe are important are bringing out the voices of community members. Mm-hmm. So as chair, if elected chair for this position, how would you bring out the voices of committee members?
Oh, I think, for better or for worse, I have already done that a lot by having the committee members often have different opinions than they do. And we've gotten several resolutions passed that I myself did not agree with, but the committee did. And the committee really solidly believed in it. And so I presented it and tried to make the case for where the committee was coming from. And I think that's important. Like you have to be able to sometimes, not, let resolutions, they will come through, even if they're not your personal favorite opinion, or if you disagree, that's not your role as a chair. You have to shape it and make sure that the committee is expressed. So yeah, no, I agree 100% on that.
Any other members? Omar, are you trying to speak?
No questions.
Okay. Margaret or Stephen Vasquez? Yep.
Yeah. I have a question. Hey, Deb, good afternoon, good evening.
Hey there.
So one of the questions that I had posed before was reaching out to our youth, right? You had stated you did a presentation at Manhattan College.
Well, so I did a presentation as part of Bob Bender organized as part of the Parks Committee. And that one was on making a parks group because Drone Park Friends and Neighbors is made through Partnership for Parks. It's a Parks endorsed, New York City Parks endorsed volunteer group. And so this one was specifically about how to make your own group. Like if you see a problem in a park, what can you do about it? And, really just break down the barriers. Some folks think that it's just, before I made a group, thought it was a big deal, that you had to get a grant or become a 501c3, or that somehow it was anything more than just actually showing up, for a few Saturdays or every Saturday and doing something and trying to organize other people. So yeah, no, that's what that was. But also when I was involved with Kingsbridge Heights Community Center, or a community association, I had a presentation on how to be engaged with the community board. And that was also because I just think it's really important, especially for high school kids, when they're really impressionable, they really want to passionately advocate, that they actually know how to do it. And when they come to a meeting, they don't feel self-conscious. They feel like, okay, I know what's going on here. Like I know when to raise my hand. Sometimes we go down a parliamentary rabbit hole, and you don't want that to be the first time where they're at a meeting and they're like, oh, this is not for me, right? This is not a welcoming space. And so I just think it's really helpful to give people like some tools to understand what they're seeing.
I do have another question. I asked Kelly the same one earlier, and that's this. Yeah. DOT at Riverdale Avenue proposal, DOT essentially refused to give the community board the presentation prior to the meeting. And DOT did not present or give anybody in the community the information until the night of your meeting. I asked Kelly, what she would do in that particular circumstance. We know how you handled it. So I guess my question is just a little bit different. Is there anything different that you would have done with regards to that meeting that night? I guess you have the benefit of hindsight.
I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think that there were a lot of constraints. One of them is that the meeting kind of came up very last minute. And we needed to get ahead of it because at the time they had said that they were going to be going, shovels in the ground, I believe in May. So they had given us a very tight deadline. And so we felt like we needed to do a resolution right away. So that was part of what was driving it. But I agree 100% that DOT should have engaged the community more. That, I was on the Mosholu Avenue call, I was on the Mosholu Avenue call in RSCB, but in the beginning of the year, in January, February, they had a community engagement session for Mosholu Avenue down by Southern Boulevard in Community Board 7. And, they had, I don't know, maybe 50 people on the call from the community. They broke everybody into separate groups. They went block by block on Mosholu, and they asked people what kinds of problems they were having. And it was really kind of wonderful. It was very much my experience. It was very similar to my experience I've had with the Parks Department, where they come early, they come when they're in the concept phase, and they say, this is what we're thinking about. What do you see? How does this impact you? And I really, and I said so at the time when we were talking about Riverdale Avenue, that's what I want to see from DOT. I don't want to see them coming at the end and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. And we're doing it this summer, and that's it. So, I agree. Like it's unfortunate that it didn't involve the community more, and they didn't give the plan earlier so that people could digest it. People could ask questions. And more importantly, it's much easier to get outreach when we can give the plan out, when we can put up flyers and say, this is what's actually happening. Otherwise, if we're just guessing and people ask us, what's going on, and we're like, we don't know, we just have heard, the high level, the headlines, and that's not so helpful. So,
Deb, let me ask a question that I asked before of someone else, Kelly. What would you do, having experienced both a bad example of communication with the community by DOT and what you described as at least one or two what you thought were pretty impressive attempts to communicate with the community in detail and early? How would you address this kind of a knotty issue that we've got?
I think part of it is that, let's just be honest. I think the DOT thought out of the gate that no matter what they did, that we were going to hate the Riverdale Avenue plan, right? And that, and it's not excusable for them to use it. It's not excusable that may be why they didn't, give us advanced discussions, why they didn't spend more time, but it's understandable in some ways. So I feel like the first thing to do is to really try to build a relationship with DOT as best you can, where you can, and try to go from there. Right now, I think we're in a good spot in that, we'll see if we're in a good spot, that, we have an interim commissioner. So we have to see who the new commissioner is. And hopefully, he's somebody who will want to work with us. I thought Navarro Lopez, who was the former Bronx Borough Commissioner, he was great. Dan and I we worked with him on the Independence Avenue project wasn't like the super productive. At the end of the day, it didn't lead to I don't think of it as a big success, but that I do have to say that, Navarro Lopez was there at 8 o'clock at night, working with the community with, while he's unpacking and moving, and was really going above and beyond to try to give the working group for Independence Ave as much of his insight and how things work. I mean, the other thing too, and this is like an educational gap, and I'm not quite sure how we fill it, but it would be helpful to fill it, or like figure out how to teach the community more about this process, is that there's just some substantial guidelines that the DOT has to follow from the federal government, from the state government, that are the reason that stop signs are the same shape no matter what state you're driving in, right? And that highways and sidewalks and everything are the same in New Jersey and New York, I mean, with very few, differences. So, I think that there's like a lot of, like, the way DOT works is inscrutable. It's hard to understand from the outside. And so I try to like put my like educator hat on a bit and try to figure out like, how do we just get, I mean, for me, for everybody, more of an understanding of how they're working, and try to get a dialogue going, hopefully with the new Bronx Borough Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one final question, then we're going to have to essentially get on to LR to dates. So everybody start looking at your calendar also. But one final question was asked of Kelly earlier.
Yeah.
All positions are considered open, for consideration each year. We do, however, have one committee where nobody has put their name in for nomination. That's the Housing Committee. Right. Would you want to be considered for that position?
I mean, I kind of I think of myself as pretty elbows deep in the issues that I've just described. And so, the Traffic and Transportation Committee is kind of where my heart's at the moment. So, I wouldn't want to be considered for a different committee at this point.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to interview there. Thank you, Deb. We appreciate you coming in and speaking with the committee this evening. For committee folks, we do need to get some dates. If you guys can look at calendars briefly.
I'll say goodbye. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Deb. So right now, our next meeting date is scheduled for May 19th. We already, as I discussed earlier, have 3 interviews set up for that evening. So we are going to need at a minimum another date or 2. So in looking at calendars, Memorial Day is May 30th. We will need, I would say, at least 2 more meetings right now. So the week of the 23rd, how do folks look for that week, Monday through Thursday? Are there any days that we could sneak in a 5:30 p.m. meeting? Is the 23rd good? Well, and I'll just go day by day. 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Is that okay for board members or for committee members?
That's fine.
Does anybody have? Omar, you're good. Steven Vasquez?
Yep, I'm good. That's fine.
Margaret Della, is that day good? Margaret? Come back to Margaret. Steve Fruit, is that day good for you?
Yes, and let me just quickly, just to short circuit, I know we lack time. I can't do anything on the 25th. However, 23rd, 24th, 26th work. But if there's any day that week where there's not a conflict with another board meeting that's coming up later in the evening, I would suggest that would be ideal. If other things
Excellent. So I'm good 23rd, 24th, and 26th, I believe, as well.
Do you have the calendar in front of you for May?
I don't. I don't have it. I'll see if I could pull it up briefly and get that up. Bronx Community Board 8. Board 8 calendar. Calendar Bronx CB8. Okay, May 2022. I'm looking at Housing Committee is 23rd at 7 p.m. 24th, Education Committee at 7:30 p.m. ENS at 7 p.m. on Wednesday the 25th, and Economic Development 7 p.m. on the 26th.
I guess I would vote for the 24th because we have that extra little.
Were you okay on the 24th?
I was. I'm just no good on the 25th.
Okay. So how about a 5? I mean, do you want to do 24th from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.?
Well, we'll use as much of it as we need. We may not need.
Absolutely. If we have that window, it's there. So 24th. And then the 26th is Economic Development at 7 p.m. or the 23rd, is Housing at 7 p.m. You want to say the 20th? And I don't care if we go back to back 23rd, 24th, and then leave the 26th in case we need it.
What's our drop? Isn't our drop dead date like
middle of June?
So we really don't have to do it that week, right? We
don't have to. It's a matter of whether or not we want to kind of get done and leave ourselves some room. So the 24th is a good date. We know this.
Okay.
And the question is, do we want to do, say, the 23rd or 26th of that week as well? And I'm open to both days.
We would probably be talking about our report on the next day.
Correct.
And so that, you know, you shouldn't be jammed up either, although you don't have to put stuff in writing necessarily. I mean, I would definitely want to, I mean, I would just throw out there the possibility of like a June 1st or a June 2nd. That would still give us plenty time, you know, June 15th deadline.
Or there's a May 31st where there's nothing on the board. It's the Tuesday after Memorial Day and we have all the time that we want.
Oh, that's great. That would be great.
So if we did a, you know, yeah, 31st works for me. Does that 31st work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So we could put on a 5:30 p.m. on the 31st, and that could.
Have we started any chance we could start at a better hour, like 6? We have started
6 p.m. works.
6.
Yeah, 6 p.m. works. Is that good for everybody? 6 p.m. on the 31st. Oh. Omar, Margaret. Oh, Margaret's texting me. I'm available 31, 1, and 2. Okay, that's great. And then, all right, so we've got the 24th from 5:30 to 7:30, that window, but starting at 5:30. And we've got May 31st at 6 p.m. with no meeting after that, which should give us plenty of time to discuss and everything else. One last organizational item, and I apologize. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting, Lisa Dow did put her name in for the aging committee. Are we going to ask Lisa Dow to come in for an interview? You know, I believe the rules would suggest that she would, because it's a new thing, though there is that caveat that Lisa was, you know, chair of this committee beforehand. So I'd throw it up for discussion before I do anything. I want to speak to the committee.
My 2 cents is that we give, oh, look who's here.
Hey, Lisa. We're going to talk about you for a minute.
Well, I was going to say, I think given that Lisa was chair for so many years and on the committee for so many years, that I would like to give her the choice if possible, but that's just my 2 cents.
Omar, Steve, and Margaret, any thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, we should provide, you know, provide the opportunity to, you know, decline or accept their invitation.
Okay, Margaret, Omar. I guess Margaret. Okay, Margaret says agreed.
Do the interview right now, if everyone's here.
You're not getting off that easy.
Except I have a quorum already for my meeting.
Well, we're going to end this in a minute. And I'm not sure who's here from the office, but we're going to end this. Okay, so we've got meeting dates 24th, 31st, and we'll extend an invitation to Lisa. Tanya, I'm going to end this meeting right now, so that way everyone's going to have to log back in, because otherwise you're going to have an issue with your videos.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys in a minute.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.